Hey guys, welcome back to another episode of Nathan Unravels the Great Mysteries of Life, the show where Nathan unravels the great mysteries of life. Today, Nathan is unraveling the great mystery of life of how one can be an avid speed cuber who really cares about improving at cubing and also have a life. Yeah, who cares about all those other things, like the meaning of life? Who cares? We ask the real questions around here. How's it going, everybody? Cubing is regarded as a pretty time-consuming hobby. Most people who are serious speed cubers or world-class spend hours every day practicing. And this makes it kind of hard for people who don't have that kind of time to get to a world-class level. But I wanted to see if you could get fast while only practicing for a small amount of time every day, because that might be helpful to people not only who don't have that kind of time to practice, but people who do have a lot of time to practice to more optimize their practice to improve quicker. Now, I myself for a while was very much into practicing a lot and spending a lot of time on cubing, but then about 6 months ago I sort of just decided that it'd be more fun to just casually speed cube and start making videos. And that's how I started making videos. But anyways, I think that makes me the perfect subject to do this sort of experiment on, because I've lost a bit of my speed on certain events during the time that I've been only casually practicing. So I wanted to do an experiment and see if I only practiced for 30 minutes a day, if I did that for 3 days, what would happen? Would I improve? How could I optimize my practice to be as fast as I could with only 30 minutes to spare? So that's what I did. So the last few days, I sat down and did a 30-minute cubing session, and I focused on 3x3 through 7x7, one-handed, and Megaminx. And because those were some of the events that I felt like I had lost the most improvement on during my little break. So I decided to see if I could sort of get myself back to normal on those events, or at least closer than I was before. So you'll see how I did in just a bit. So on the first day, I started with 3x3 and I did a 3x3 warm-up average of 5. It was nothing special, pretty average. Then I moved on to 4x4, and for 4x4 I didn't do exactly too great. I was getting around 43, 44 seconds, which before I averaged 37, 38, somewhere around there. So I knew I needed to work on that. And then I moved on to 5x5. The first solve wasn't great, but then I decided that I needed to focus more on look ahead. And so I did that the second solve, slowed down my turning a bit and focused on look ahead, and it improved significantly, so I decided I didn't really need to focus too much on 5x5 anymore. And then I moved on to 6x6, and it was horrible. I was so far off from my average. I was completely, totally inconsistent the entire time. I needed to put in some work for 6x6. So I made a note to myself that I needed to work on 6x6, and then I moved on to 3x3 one-handed, which was actually surprisingly good. I got a sub 18 average, which at one point I averaged around 16 and a half, high 16s, so that's not too far off from my average. So I figured I was pretty happy with that, and I also did a little bit of a turning exercise to work on my turning. So that was definitely surprising in a good way. The 6x6 was surprising in a bad way. And then at the end, I had some time left, so I just worked on various 3x3 exercises, cross plus one, look ahead, slow turning, all those things. It wasn't really anything special. I didn't do bad per se, but it wasn't amazing. So what did I learn from the first day? Well, I learned that I'm still basically the same at 3x3, and I still am terrible at cross plus one. I'm a little bit worse at 4x4. I learned that using slow turning on 5x5 definitely helps to improve my times, and I learned I'm horrible at 6x6 compared to my average before. Even though some things weren't as good as I hoped they would be, I felt like this was a very good practice for only having 30 minutes, and I was excited for what I could do for the next few days. So just like the first day, I started the second day with a warm-up average of 5 on 3x3. Again, it wasn't really anything special, pretty average for me. And then I decided, because I was doing so terrible at 6x6 the other day, that I decided to focus on 6x6 and 7x7 exclusively, along with 3x3, for this practice. So I started with 6x6, and I focused on slow turning, and I was able to get a lot better times than the other day. Still pretty far out from my averages, but not as bad as the other day, and much less inconsistent as well. Then I moved on to 7x7,
And 7x7 actually surprised me. I wasn't as far off on my averages as I was from 6x6. I was able to get some around 350 in 4-minute times, which before I averaged around 345, so that's not too far off, especially compared to 6x6 where I was close to like 20 seconds off from my previous average. So that was actually surprising in a good way. And then I had some time at the end, so again I just did some little 3x3 exercises, so that was nice.
So after the abysmal 6x6 the first day, focusing on 6x6 and 7x7 the second day I think was definitely a smart move. I was able to improve a little bit at 6x6, especially compared to the other day, and although I was still farther off from my average, I felt more comfortable and I was definitely doing better. And 7x7, I was pleasantly surprised of how good I was able to do despite having taken a long break. And that really shows how just doing solves on big cubes can help. You don't necessarily have to focus on something, because big cubes often you just need to solve to improve.
So going into the third and final day, I started it the same way that I started the other days, which was a warm-up 3x3 average of 5. As expected, it wasn't anything super crazy, but it's just a warm-up for the other events, so I didn't really care. Then I went on to 4x4, which was an event that I didn't do particularly great on the first day, but I decided I needed to focus on first 3 edge look ahead, which I think is sort of one of my weaknesses. So I focused on it, and I was able to get much better times with much less pausing. I got a sub 38 average of 5, which is pretty good for me and pretty close to my old averages. Then I went on to Megaminx, which was an event that I hadn't done on days 1 or 2, and I was pleasantly surprised of how well I was able to do. I got quite a few sub 110s, which is pretty close to my old averages, so that was definitely a good surprise. Then I went on to 6x6 because I still felt like I needed to work on 6x6 because I was so far off from my average. I actually got pretty similar times to the second day, but a bit more consistent. Then I went on to just do some 3x3 exercises because I had time left over, but this time instead of doing like, just slow turning or cross plus one or some other exercise, I decided to actually do some last layer, and I just timed my last layer, and that was actually felt more effective than some of the other drills. I feel like that's because last layer is sort of one of my areas myself where I'm just okay, I'm not great. So that was good.
So what happened on the third day? Well, I got better at 4x4 compared to the first day, and I was able to get closer to my average times. And Megaminx surprised me similar to 7x7 and OH in terms of how well I was able to do despite my long break. And that really shows the power of efficiency on Megaminx, because that was what I focused on. So, in conclusion, I think this was a very eye-opening and interesting experiment. And it really showed me how much deliberate practice and optimized practice can help even when you don't have a lot of time. Now, I personally would not recommend at all, if you can avoid it, only practicing on a set period of time. But I think what is more interesting that came out of this is if I was to practice for 3 hours as optimized as I did for 30 minutes, I would improve really a lot faster than if I just did solves for 3 hours, because that's what a lot of people do, is they'll just do solves for a long time. But when you're forced to have time constraints and you have to optimize your practice, it makes it so that you can improve faster in a short period of time. So I think if that was applied to longer practices, then it could really help some people improve fast, even though I'm not really trying to improve a lot. Now, if there's one thing I'm really disappointed by, it's the 3x3 performance that I had. I basically made no changes in my 3x3 average or how good I was at certain steps. My main weakness, which is obviously cross plus one, is something that I really need to just sit down and work on for a long time. It's not really something that I can do under a time limit or with other things. So that was kind of disappointing, but everything else I felt like I did some decent progress. Even 6x6, which I'm still pretty far off from my average on, I felt like I did a lot better than I expected to. But I definitely think this was a good exercise for me to do, and I think it has some good applications for people who just do solves constantly to actually try and optimize their practice. Alright, and that's the video. Okay. The outro. Come on. Come on. Okay, I'll just do it myself. Do 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 do. Like, seriously, but, like, it's the end of the video. Okay, so I think I know why the video hasn't ended yet. It's because I'm quickly approaching 100 subscribers. So I wanted to thank you all for getting me this far. Hopefully we can reach 100 subscribers soon. But anyways, one of the things that I'm going to be doing when we hit 100 subscribers is I'm going to be doing a Q&A. Now, there's a lot of other stuff I want to do, but it's all a secret and you'll have to find out later. But with the Q&A, you can't exactly keep it a secret because you won't have any questions. So comment your questions down below and help us get to 100 subscribers, and then I will answer the questions at some point. Okay, is there anything else? Anything else? Okay, good. I don't want to do that again. Thank you. Bye.